Welcome to this journey through one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of Little Rock, Arkansas. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. We're interested in knowing to which places and at what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. In the autumn of 1840, when Little Rock was still a growing frontier town along the Arkansas River, a series of events began that would remain buried in obscure county records for over a century. The story centers around the Moreau Plantation, located approximately 5 miles east of what is now downtown Little Rock, and a man named Solomon Graves, whose existence was nearly erased from historical record. The first unusual detail was recorded by Reverend William Stevenson in his parish registry on October 12, 1840. The entry simply noted, "Called to Moreau Estate, unusual circumstances, no burial performed." This brief notation might have gone unnoticed, except for what followed in the subsequent weeks. According to tax records from that year, the Moreau Plantation, once among the most productive in Pulaski County, suddenly reported a significant decrease in production. By December of that same year, the property was listed as temporarily non-operational. What makes this case particularly disturbing is not what was documented, but rather what was deliberately omitted from official records. The Moreau family, led by plantation owner Bernard Moreau and his wife Charlotte, were known figures in Little Rock society. Their 23-year-old daughter Adeline was mentioned frequently in society pages of the Arkansas Gazette through the summer of 1840. After September of that year, her name vanishes from all public records. Similarly, county employment records show that Solomon Graves, a free black man who worked as a skilled carpenter, disappears from tax rolls and census data after August 1840. The Arkansas Historical Society archives contain a leather-bound journal discovered during a courthouse renovation in 1963 that belonged to Dr. James Woodson, Little Rock's primary physician during that period. His entry from September 28, 1840, reads, "Called to Moreau Plantation regarding female patient. Condition beyond medical intervention. Master insists condition resulted from fall down stairs. Evidence suggests otherwise. No further action taken as per custom with such matters." The Moreau Plantation stood on what is now the eastern outskirts of Little Rock, where Forsh Creek meets the Arkansas River. The main house was described in architectural surveys as a grand 2-story structure with 12 rooms, unusual for Arkansas territory at that time. According to property maps from 1838, the estate included the main house, a separate kitchen building, stables, and 2 rows of cabins that housed approximately 40 enslaved people who worked the cotton fields. Before the events of 1840, Bernard Moreau was known as one of the more progressive plantation owners in the region. County records indicate he allowed some of the enslaved people to learn trades and occasionally hire out their labor in Little Rock. This practice was controversial among other plantation owners, as documented in minutes from town meetings, where Moreau defended his economic approach. It was through this system that Solomon Graves, though legally enslaved, functioned with some degree of autonomy as a skilled carpenter who could read and write. Charlotte Moreau, according to accounts in the papers of Elizabeth Trapnell, wife of a prominent Little Rock merchant, was a woman of delicate constitution but iron will. Mrs. Trapnell's letters to her sister in Virginia mention Charlotte's reputation for maintaining strict discipline among the household staff, while presenting a perfect facade of Southern gentility to Little Rock society. Their daughter Adeline was educated in Philadelphia and returned to Little Rock in 1838. The Arkansas Gazette's society pages described her as the jewel of Little Rock society and a young woman of considerable intellectual accomplishment and refined artistic sensibility. Her return coincided with the arrival of several pieces of furniture and architectural elements for the ongoing expansion of the Moreau home. According to inventory records, Bernard Moreau commissioned extensive woodwork for the east wing addition to the main house. Receipts found in the county clerk's records indicate that Solomon Graves was responsible for crafting much of this woodwork, including an elaborately carved staircase that was the centerpiece of the expanded home. What transpired on the Moreau plantation in the late summer of 1840 remains largely undocumented in official records. However, a series of letters discovered in 1957 during the demolition of an old post office building provides some insight. These letters, written by Harriet Parker, a distant cousin of Charlotte Moreau, who visited the plantation that summer, were never sent. They were found sealed in a tin box within a wall cavity. In one letter dated August 3, 1840, Harriet wrote, "Something unusual is developing at Moreau Plantation. Adeline spends hours in the new East Wing, supposedly overseeing the final details of the woodwork. Charlotte has mentioned the carpenter, Solomon, with increasing frequency and evident displeasure. Bernard seems oblivious, concerned only with the cotton yield predictions." A subsequent letter, dated August 17th, states, "The atmosphere in this house grows heavier by the day. I observed Adeline in conversation with the carpenter on 3 occasions this week. Their exchanges, while seemingly about the woodwork details, carried undertones that Charlotte clearly perceived as well. Last night voices were raised after dinner. Bernard's study door remained closed for hours afterward." The final letter, dated September 2nd, reads only, "I am leaving tomorrow. What I witnessed this evening near the old oak by the creek cannot be put to paper. Charlotte's face when she returned to the house will haunt me forever. I told her what I saw was surely a misunderstanding, but her eyes showed she believed otherwise. I fear what may follow. What happened in the weeks that followed can only be pieced together through fragmented sources. The ledger of Simeon Johnson, who operated the ferry across the Arkansas River, notes on September 25th. Unusual movement from Moreau Plantation after midnight. Wagon with covered cargo. No questions asked as per Mr. Moreau's standing instructions. Dr. Woodson's journal entry from September 28th, previously mentioned, suggests some kind of physical trauma occurred. A subsequent entry on October 4th states only, "Moreau matter concluded, informed by Sheriff Davis that no further medical documentation required." The most disturbing evidence comes from a source discovered much later. In 1952, during excavation for a new county administrative building, workers uncovered a small metal box buried approximately 6 feet deep. Inside was a folded piece of parchment containing what appeared to be a letter written in a careful, educated hand. The Arkansas State Archives authenticated the document as dating from the 1840s, though the exact date is unclear. The letter begins without salutation. If this account is found, know that injustice has been buried alongside truth. I, Solomon Graves, being of sound mind but desperate circumstance, hereby attest to the events that have transpired at Moreau Plantation. Miss Adeline and I have committed no sin before God, though man's law would condemn our association. We spoke only of books, of ideas, of a world different from this one. When discovered in conversation by Mrs. Moreau near the creekside oak, the fury unleashed was immediate. I am held now in the root cellar, awaiting whatever fate awaits me. Miss Adeline has been confined to her room for 3 days. The shouting from the main house suggests her condition deteriorates. I write this in haste as Mr. Carpenter, who brings me water, has agreed to conceal this testimony somewhere it might eventually be found. May God have mercy where man has shown none. The letter ends abruptly. No signature is present, suggesting it was interrupted or that the final portion was lost. What happened to Solomon Graves remains unrecorded in any official capacity. No death certificate, burial record, or sale documentation exists. Similarly, Adeline Moreau's fate is equally obscured. The most telling piece of evidence comes from the Arkansas Gazette, dated November 5, 1840, which includes a small notice. The Moreau family announces with regret that Miss Adeline Moreau has been sent to reside with relatives in France due to health concerns exacerbated by the Arkansas climate. The family requests privacy during this difficult time. No passenger manifests from New Orleans to France list Adeline Moreau as a passenger in 1840 or 1841. No correspondence from France referring to her arrival exists in the Moreau family papers that were donated to the Arkansas Historical Society in 1912 by Bernard Moreau's grandnephew. The story might have remained completely buried were it not for the work of Professor Sarah Caldwell of the University of Arkansas. In 1968, while researching antebellum architecture, she became interested in the distinctive woodwork that had been salvaged from the Moreau Plantation before its demolition in 1921. Several pieces, including portions of a staircase and wall panels, had been preserved in the Arkansas State Museum's collection. Professor Caldwell's examination of these architectural elements revealed something unusual. Hidden within the elaborate carvings of the stair banister were small, almost imperceptible symbols and letters. When documented and analyzed, they appeared to be a form of coded communication. Among the repeating motifs were the initials S and A, intertwined in such a way that casual observation would see only decorative flourishes. Most significantly, on the underside of one stair tread, carefully carved where it would remain invisible except during removal or repair, was an inscription: "Two souls, bound by mind, separated by circumstance. S.G. for A.M. Summer, 1840. The Moreau Plantation site itself revealed one final piece of evidence when the property was surveyed for commercial development in 1965. Ground-penetrating radar revealed an anomaly near where the east wing of the house once stood. Limited archaeological excavation uncovered a small, unmarked grave containing human remains. The burial, according to the archaeological report, appeared hurried and irregular. The skeleton showed evidence of trauma to the skull and neck vertebrae. Carbon dating placed the burial between 1840 and 1845. No definitive identification was ever made, as DNA testing was not available at that time. The remains were reinterred in the Little Rock Cemetery with a simple marker reading, "Unknown, circa 1840. The case file was closed in 1968, with the official conclusion listing the remains as likely those of an unidentified plantation worker. Bernard Moreau continued to operate his plantation until his death in 1862 during the Civil War. Charlotte Moreau survived him by 12 years, eventually moving to Memphis to live with her sister. Neither ever spoke publicly about their daughter or the events of 1840, according to any surviving records. The Moreau Plantation changed hands several times after the Civil War. By the turn of the century, the once grand house had fallen into disrepair. Those who lived in the area developed a reputation for avoiding the property, particularly the area where the East Wing once stood. Local accounts collected by folklorists in the 1930s refer to uneasy feelings and sounds of distress around the old foundation stones. One account, recorded from an elderly man named William Jefferson, who had worked on neighboring land as a young man in the 1880s, stated, "That old Moreau place wasn't right, especially when you'd work near where that fancy east part used to be, like somebody watching. Sometimes sounded like wood creaking, like somebody on them stairs that wasn't there no more. White folks said it was just old stories, but anybody who worked that land knew better. Something happened there that the earth don't forget." In 1919, a developer purchased the land with plans to subdivide it for housing. During the initial clearing, workers reportedly refused to continue after finding what they described as unusual markings carved into the few remaining foundation stones of the east wing. The developer eventually abandoned the project, citing financial concerns rather than worker superstitions. The land remained undeveloped until 1950, when it was purchased for industrial use. The warehouse built on the site experienced unusually high turnover among night security staff through the 1950s. Incident reports frequently mentioned unexplained noises and cold spots near the northeast corner of the building. The warehouse was eventually demolished in 1968 after a fire of undetermined origin. Today, the land where the Moreau Plantation once stood is occupied by a commercial distribution center. Employees occasionally report unusual experiences in certain areas of the building, particularly near where the east wing of the original house would have been located. Management attributes these stories to normal building noises and the power of suggestion. The full truth of what happened between Solomon Graves and Adeline Moreau in the summer of 1840 will never be known with certainty. What evidence exists suggests a connection between an enslaved craftsman and the daughter of his enslaver that transgressed the strict social boundaries of the time. Whether their relationship was romantic or intellectual in nature remains speculative, though Solomon's hidden message in the staircase suggests deep emotional attachment. What is clear is that whatever transpired resulted in the disappearance of both individuals from historical record, with evidence suggesting at least one violent death and careful concealment by the Moreau family. The story represents one of countless lost histories from America's troubled past, where lives could be erased and truths buried by those with the power and privilege to control the narrative. In 2008, a small memorial plaque was placed in Little Rock's Riverfront Park, reading, "In memory of those whose stories were silenced, their truths may be unearthed by time." Though not specifically referencing Solomon Graves and Adeline Moreau, local historians consider it a subtle acknowledgement of their story and others like it. The most haunting aspect of this case may be how easily the truth was nearly lost to history. Were it not for a hidden letter, concealed carvings, and the persistent work of researchers over a century later, the events at Moreau Plantation would have remained completely buried, like so many other stories from that dark period of American history. Those who visit the site today report no supernatural occurrences. There are no ghosts that walk the grounds where the Moreau Plantation once stood. The true horror lies not in spectral manifestations, but in the very human capacity for cruelty, the silencing of voices, and the burying of truths that contradict the preferred narratives of those in power. As one researcher noted in the final paragraph of her 1968 report on the case, the most disturbing aspect of the Graves-Moreau mystery is not what we know happened, but rather how effectively the truth was hidden by those with the means to do so. One wonders how many similar stories remain buried, their participants forgotten, their injustices unacknowledged. The records related to this case were archived and largely forgotten until 1952. The Arkansas Historical Society maintains a small collection of the evidence, including photographs of Solomon's woodwork and a transcript of his incomplete letter. Few request to see these materials, fewer still know the story they tell. Perhaps somewhere in an archive yet to be fully examined, or beneath soil yet to be turned, more evidence waits to be discovered. Until then, the whispered story of Solomon Graves and Adeline Moreau serves as a reminder that history is often written by those who survive to tell it, while the voices of others are silenced, sometimes forever. A final, Disturbing footnote to this story emerged in 1963 when an elderly woman named Margaret Wilson contacted the Arkansas Historical Society claiming to possess a family Bible belonging to her grandmother. Within its pages was a pressed flower and a handwritten note dated October 1840 that read simply, "A sends this from her new room. The air is cool here. The door is always locked." When researchers arranged to meet with Mrs. Wilson to examine this potential evidence, they discovered she had passed away suddenly. The family Bible was never found among her possessions. And so the mystery remains, echoing through time like footsteps on a staircase that no longer exists. In 1965, Dr. Thomas Bennett, a history professor specializing in antebellum Arkansas, received an unusual package from a former student. The student, while clearing out his recently deceased grandmother's attic in Memphis, had discovered a small wooden box with the initials CM carved into its lid. Inside was a collection of personal items, a tarnished silver hairbrush, several faded ribbons, and a small leather-bound journal. The journal belonged to Charlotte Moreau. Dr. Bennett's subsequent paper, published in a limited circulation academic journal in 1967, revealed that Charlotte Moreau's private writings provided a disturbing counterpoint to the public records. The journal, covering August through December of 1840, contained entries that shed new light on the events at the Moreau plantation. An entry from August 25th reads, "I have observed A with that man again today." Their conversation appeared innocent enough, discussions of the woodwork patterns, but there is something in her eyes when she speaks with him that disturbs me greatly. Bernard refuses to acknowledge my concerns, insisting I am imagining impropriety where none exists. He values the man's craftsmanship too highly to consider my observations. By early September, Charlotte's entries grow increasingly agitated. A was not at breakfast again today. When I went to her room, her bed was undisturbed. I found her in the east wing, examining the new staircase banister with him. They stood too close. Their hands touched as she traced the pattern of his carving. When they saw me, they moved apart with such guilty haste that no explanation could satisfy. I have instructed Esther to inform me immediately if A leaves her room after dark. The entry from September 23rd contains the most revealing and disturbing passage. What happened tonight cannot be undone. When A did not appear for dinner, I went to search for her. The house was empty. A lantern was moving near the old oak by the creek. I followed. What I witnessed there between my daughter and that man has seared itself into my mind. I returned to the house and informed Bernard. His rage was terrifying. He summoned Thomas and William from the stables. They went out with rope and clubs. They returned with him an hour later. A was brought back separately. She fought like one possessed. She screams still from the room where we have confined her. Bernard says we must wait until she is calmer before determining our course of action. The man is secured below. Bernard has sent word to Dr. Woodson regarding A's nervous condition. The final entry pertaining to the matter, dated October 1st, is brief. It is done. A understands now that she must accept our decision. The story of her departure for France has been arranged. She will be taken to the place we have prepared tomorrow. Dr. Woodson has provided medication to ease her transit. As for the other matter, Bernard handled it personally last night. The ferry was used. The river keeps secrets better than men. Dr. Bennett noted in his paper that the remaining journal entries make no further explicit mention of either Adeline or Solomon. Charlotte's writing becomes increasingly fragmented over the following months, with references to hearing movement in the East Wing and A's voice calling from empty rooms. By December, she writes of